Hello and welcome back, and today we want to look at a Plex media server test on the new Synology DS920 Plus. It's going to be a very quick test today because we've got some more intensive tests coming up in about 4 or 5 videos time. But today we're going to be replicating the test that we performed on the DS220 Plus. The reason being that these were kind of standard tests and they did give us a lot of information about how this CPU was able to deal with a number of different file codecs and file formats and the compression techniques therein. But a few things straight off the bat. We are using the 4GB model of the Synology DS920. I'm not upgrading the memory. And in my video coming later on, I will be looking at the effects of SSD caching on Plex Media Server. But for now, we're running just a standard build. It's running an SHR for the RAID. We've got 4 gig of memory. It's the quad-core processor found in the 920 with no SSD caching. We're also using a Plex pass as well. So we do have transcoding enabled. We've got the transcoder up and running on there. And we're going to be using the same files as we did last time. Right now, you are looking at a desktop PC here that's got all the files being played, but because of rendering and the ability to just fit so much on screen, it's easier to do it this way across multiple screens, as well as utilizing that old faithful tool, OBS. On top of that, we will be running mobile phone tests as well in the background, just to give us some idea about how the device deals with multi-access, as well as those different file types. Now, on the right-hand side of the main screen, you've got the dashboard of Plex that's giving us real-time information about the CPU, the memory, and the network bandwidth. And on the left-hand side of the screen is where we're going to be utilizing the Plex monitoring resources as well. The two bars here on the right-hand side represent Plex Media Server and the NAS system. And you'll always find that Plex Media Server, in terms of CPU utilization, will always be using less until we start playing files. Now, we've got different files that we're going to be utilizing today in 720p, 1080p, 4K, and Ultra 4K. We'll be trying all those files, and it's worth also highlighting, just finally, that the version of Plex that we're using today, if we go to the general options, you'll see that we're not actually using the latest version of Plex. A number of you reached out to me about my previous tests and mentioned regarding the Plex video encoder, and there's a driver on there that you can delete that will improve your performance. Now, as I mentioned, this is the vanilla video. We will be doing another video soon where we go through the steps of deleting that driver and allowing the default driver to be used. You've got to go in via the back end with a SH8, and then after that, start removing that driver so the default can be used, and it does improve your performance. And once again, our man Taiko, or Taiko, again, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, dude. He was a big help on this, walking me through at the early stages. But let's get this testing underway already. So, first test we're going to be running is standard 720p file. We've used it before. I believe it is the matrix file here. And the matrix is a 720p file at H.264, we can see. And we can go ahead and play that now. I'm just going to make sure we've got everything muted, because I'd hate for this video to get taken down unnecessarily. And we're going to carry on from the beginning. I'm going to go ahead and play the file. And again, it doesn't help. This file has a green intro there. As we can already see from the screen, the bandwidth has shot up while we've been accessing that file. And along the bottom, we're not watching too much activity in terms of the read and write. Once again, you can probably hear noises in the background there. I am filming this at the roof office here, and unfortunately, we got a lot of birds here. Really, the world has claimed itself back ever since lockdown. But carrying on forward. So, we've got the movie there. Why don't we skip forward away just to see how well it deals with that. And pretty fine there. We are still playing the file at original quality, but we can go down here and start making some adjustments if we so choose. But we'll leave that running at the original 0.7 megabytes per second, 720p HD H.264 file. Now, while it's playing this movie file, I'm now going to play the exact same movie file on a phone here that I've got, just to show it being utilized. Just making sure the media volume's at 0, and I'm now going to play that file via Plex at the same time, and we'll play it from some arbitrary place in the film. And again, we'll play from the beginning and then we'll skip forward to some scene. And again, they're being played simultaneously, the 720p file, absolutely seamlessly. I know it's hard to make out the mobile phone. This is a very dark film in places, trying to find a nice bright scene for you there. But they're both being played remarkably well. I'm sorry if my voice seems to move away from the mic. I've got to shift around about 3 different screens right now. So you can already see the bandwidth there spiking while I've been accessing the same file on the mobile phone when I was doing the skipping forward. That is annotated there, but it's still handling a 720p file on 2 devices very, very well. So now we're going to come out of that file. I'm just going to exit that on the mobile phone. Pop that down there. Hopefully that won't interfere with the mic. And then from there, we'll make our way back to the PC. And this time, we're going to start conducting some transcoding. So we're going to have a look at the file types. And we're going to convert this 720p file down to... Actually, let's upscale it. This is now going to go to 4 megabits per second, 720p. Now, generally, this won't make a vast amount of difference because you are still dealing with a raw format that you're scaling up. It's the down that's a real problem. But the file does seem to be dealing with it pretty well there in the background. We're not losing any fidelity there. Let's make another change. Let's bring it down to 720p. Actually, let's go for 480p because this is where we started seeing the occasional problem. Now, we've moved down into 480p 1.5 megabits. So twice the megabits per second playback, but a lower resolution. So let's remove that so we can see the file completely. And seemingly we have had a tiniest bump in the road there on CPU utilization, but it's been incredibly small. The system has dealt with it well. Let's skip forward a big way. And as you can see, the bandwidth has made a jump there while we've been moving forward, and it's had to upload another segment of the movie. But for the most part, this seems to be playing pretty well. We'll make another skip there, and we'll see another spike, no doubt, in bandwidth. We're seeing that there, and again, spoiler alert if you've not seen the movie The Matrix, but in my defense, it's like 20 years old now. So, moving back, let's go back into the film section and try another file. This time, we're going to go for Little Shop of Horrors. Now, this one is a 1080p H.264 file. It's not a vast amount denser, but it's fairly standard of the sort of media files you might be playing. So again, we're going to play it from the beginning. We're going to let that play there. I'll just move the laptop. There's the spike in bandwidth that we anticipated, that we saw before. The file's going to play there. And we'll skip forward a big chunk. Again, if you've never seen this film, you're missing out. It's incredible. I don't care how old it is not aged badly at all. It's very much a product of its time, but this is not movie reviews. You've got other YouTube channels for that. So, once again, we're playing the file, and again, we are going to run the file on the phone at exactly the same time, so we can see what that does to playback. So once again, we're going to play the file. We'll play from a set piece there in the movie. We're weirdly very close to where the two scenes are right now. Put that there. And we can see a little bit of a bump this time. Probably the biggest bump we've seen so far for the CPU there. And the bandwidth has had that bump as well. But it has adjusted very well while it's acclimated. So let's skip forward on both devices at once. So now we've done a big skip forward on both of them together. And now we can see that the bandwidth has obviously shot up. And the CPU utilization has approached 20%, but it hasn't really quite hit there. It's probably somewhere in the early teens, but it has adjusted well, and the memory, it hasn't even blinked. It's not moved at all. We can see that the utilization of that memory, if we scroll down a little bit, is still, as far as the system's concerned, at 40%, but Plex isn't really hitting it too hard for us. Okay, so now the transcoding test. Let's start changing this file around. We're going to move from this 1.9 megabits per second 1080p file. We're going to move it up now to a much higher bit rate. Still 1080p, but we're going to move it up to 12 megabits per second. Now, press play there, and we'll see how the system dealt with that. Now the bandwidth hasn't adjusted too much. We've not seen too much of an impact. Upscaling those bit rates don't seemingly make a great deal of difference there, and you will have to have the right kind of device to really see that. I mean, if we move it up to the very highest, we can move along there and have a look at what that's doing to the bit rate on the performance of the NAS and the Plex Media Server. But again, we're seeing the CPU now live a little higher as far as the system's concerned, but that's about it. I don't really have any background processes happening during this. So now we've performed that, let's transcode down. And this is where I remember us starting to have a few bumps in the road. So now we've converted down to a 720p file, but still at 4 megabits per second bit rate. Let's skip forward. Let's not give the buffering any too much of a chance there. And as we've skipped forward, we've seen the usual rise there in the background of our bandwidth utilization. But all the other specifications do seem to be pretty level. So next, before I go up on the roof and destroy a seagull that's annoying me, and yes, I can hear it too, let's move forward into our next file type. So let's exit this. And actually, before we do that, that is worth highlighting something I didn't do there. Let's go a little higher. And again, let's skip forward. Let's go for, there's the original bandwidth. And this time, let's transcode it down to 480, because this is where I remember that we started to see problems. Because now we're converting into 480p on this file at 1.5 megabits. Not that you would do something like this very often. And again, I should highlight, I am still playing the movie on the mobile phone. So that is still running there in the background. We have noticed that 480p is where we started to see, when converting down, the occasional problem. If we try to skip to another area of the movie, we're not able to. And this is a lot to do with that encode decode that we talked about before in our previous videos. And again, the larger scale video will go in more detail, but I'm going to call that a big old fail. So, I exit the movie from the mobile phone as well. Now we're going to move into the intense file formats. These are the ones where actually when they're still a 920, you can see lots of NASs here for other testing coming up soon. But these files here are the ones that largely are the biggest heavy hitters, and the majority of these will not be played on this NAS. As you might be able to see, these are the files from Jellyfish's own test website. I recommend you check them out. And there's lots of information about them already encoded into the name. So first and foremost, we'll go for something nice and easy. This is a 3 megabits per second 1080p file at H.264. We play this file. It's going to play back nice and easy, but we will start to see more utilization of the internal hardware during these kind of tests, because these are the tests that use the denser files, the higher bit rates, the bigger files, and this is where bandwidth stops even being a noticeable thing, because it's just going to max every time. So that plays the file pretty well. So let's start the file again, but this time we're going to transcode it, and we're going to transcode it down to 720p 4 megs. Again, we're seeing a little slowdown there. I don't know if you guys can see that, if that's being portrayed there. I am recording, the camera that's recording the screen here is a 4K camera. So let's go back. Now, once again, we'll go bigger. Oh, sorry, we'll scale down smaller, to 720p. And this is where pixelization has kicked in. And you can see the buffer there, it was really having difficulty keeping up there. So I don't know how well you can make that out at the bottom, the buffer zone. But the buffer zone here, if we move that file down quite a lot, so if we downscale to 720 and we try to click play, the buffering will resume when I click play. It just can't keep up. There's our buffer zone, and the system is just not able to play with this file. Now, once again, once we remove that driver and let the device, let Plex utilize the default video drivers, we may be in with better results. But that was an H.264 3 megabit per second file. Now, there are different versions of all of these files. If we move up now to an H.264 10 megabit, so again, same file, but 10 megabit instead of 3, let's play back that file. Now, straight away, as you can see, without transcoding, this Plex Media Server is playing that 1080p file at 10 megabits per second, which is great. But if we carry on, if we go back and this time we transcode, we are going to see worse results. So again, we're going to go for 720p HD, and the system's going to have a bit of a think about it, but again, it kicks us out of that file, and you can already see the CPU spike there while it was trying to do it. So that's the thing you have to bear in mind. Now, if we move up to an H.264 1080p 30 megabyte file, it plays back, and that's the point. It's the ability that it can play these files, but it's the DS920's ability to transcode that's really in question here. If we move that back, we'll pause it a second. No, we won't pause it. We'll try and do the transcode again, because there is, of course, the option to automatically transcode. And automatic transcoding is when Plex will designate the ideal and recommended Plex transcode to happen for you. But we're not able to do that in this test because we don't want the recommended. We want to test preset scenarios. So there was our 30 megabytes per second or megabits per second 1080p. Let's move up a scale. It's worth mentioning that this one here, 10 megabit, 10 bit rate, 1080p H.265, this is basically the kryptonite of this system. 10-bit and 8-bit is something we've talked about in other videos, and we do have a video coming up where we're going to deal with this. But even playing back 10-bit H.265 1080p, it is going to struggle. As you see here, this is without transcoding. And if you try to go into it, it's had to convert it. It can't play it back. And even then, it still struggled. So as mentioned in my other videos, do bear that factor in mind. But let's continue our testing. Now we're going to move up to a 100 megabits per second 1080p file. And again, we've got it in H.264 and H.265. So let's play the H.264 file first. This is 100 megabit. It's going to have a bit of a think about it, but it did play the file. As you can see, we are seeing a little bit more utilization happening in the background there, but nothing too murderous. It's still playing these files, and we can still view these files happening. Again, we would transcode, but I think we know how that ends by now. Now we're going to try the same file, but this time H.265. It's going to have a bit of a think about it. And the good thing is we can still see the utilization there on the CPU bar for the H.264 earlier and now the H.265. And the pixelization is all over the shop there. We're seeing a lot of pixelization. This had to obviously have been a convert there in the background. Let's play that again. And we can see that the system is having to convert this file because it just is just not able to play that. And that is something that's very important about this device to bear in mind. And why, when we do go through the non-vanilla setup, when we talk about the things you can do with this device, improving it going forward, that's going to be interesting to show you guys. So we're going to exit that file before it just kicks it out anyway. And now we're going to go to some 4K. These are 4K files. They're starting at 120 megabits per second. And we've got UHD 264 and we've got 265 up there. So let's try the UHD 264 first. But again, keeping an eye on the resources here on screen. Now this is when we're playing back quite high content on 4K at H.264 on a Plex NAS. Now this is where we're going to see the 920 really struggle. This is where you need an Intel Core CPU, an i3, an i5 or an i7, a decent quad-core Pentium. This is where you need essentially a CPU with a decent transcoding engine built into it that's more than embedded graphics in the most basic way. You need something with inbuilt GPU such as an AMD, and this is not what this NAS was built to do. So let's go for the H.264. Let's go for the 4K. We're looking for the 120 megabit 264. Let's have a look. We want HEVC. I'm sure you guys can see it on screen. And again, this is a 10-bit version 4K, 120 meg, H.265. If this file plays native, I'll eat my hat. And luckily my hat is made of Haribo. But it's not going to play this file. It's going to have to convert it, and you're going to see that spike again. But if it can play it converted, I'll be impressed. The buffering is even struggling too. The buffering's up to here. And it's getting to a point where you have to remember the size of these files, particularly in these cases where a file is so large that even at 30 seconds long, each second is hundreds of megabytes. Buffering becomes near impossible. The buffering right now is up to here, it's up to 6 seconds, so shortly, no, it wasn't even able to do it, and look at that CPU utilization, it's crazy. So now let's move to some of the largest ones of all. Now we're going to switch up to a 200 megabit per second 4K H.264. And again, almost certainly this file is going to need to be transcoded, but we'll see what the system does. The system is going to try it native. That's impressive. I didn't think it would try to do that. Presumably because it's H.264, it feels confident that it can at least give it a jolly good go. Now, if we convert it down manually, let's see if it'll let us transcode it down to maybe 720p 4 megabits per second. Let's have a look, because it was really struggling there. But it looks like this file might just be too hot to handle for this device. And again, if there is a 265 version 10-bit, I'll give it a go, but almost certainly we're not going to see any playback on that. But, you know, fair dues to it. It's managing to play it. It's done the convert, but the buffering was just not enough for such a short file. Maybe we would have seen better results with a bigger file there. And let's give this 200 meg file, and again, 10-bit H.265, straight away into the convert. It's not even trying to give it a go. And I reckon we're going to see a repeat of this, as we're seeing here. Even the bandwidth, we're not even sending the file out because the system's having such difficulty handling this file that it's just not on the table. Bear in mind, of course, we are talking some of the most top-end 4K playback. I wouldn't have even expected this to play back on a Plex media server. Maybe Video Station. I reckon we might have stood a chance on Video Station, but it still would have factored in the video driver being utilized by the Synology NAS, something that this Plex app is just not open to in this state. So now let's end on the 400 megabit per second 10-bit H.265 file. This is basically Olympus. Let's give it a look. It's going to try to convert. It's going to give it a try, but just looking at that memory utilization, I do think we're having a losing fight here. Ultimately, if I had to summarize what I've looked at today, I'd say I'm still happy with the way the DS920 performed. You are buying a NAS that is built for mid-range, and if you do utilize this device with Video Station, I reckon we're going to see very, very different results. I am doing a full Video Station overview of the DS920 that I look forward to sharing with you. But right there, you can see all of these files, and we can maybe have it a try. Give it a try. Let's have a look. Let's see how. Go to, I believe it's Home Movies. Let's see how Video Station would have handled this same test. Now, bear in mind, right now, what you're looking at is utilizing screen recording here. So the results aren't going to be as good. Let's move over to this screen. We are going to have to re-log into the device. I could delete this, but I'm not going to because I want to keep all this in to show you guys there's been no breaks in recording where possible. Let's go in. Let's go into Video Station, Synology's own app, and we will be running a full Video Station test on the Synology DS920. But I know you guys wanted to see Plex Media Server first. So let's go with the 100 meg file first, or what was it, the 120, the H.265. Let's see if Video Station could have actually played that file. Let's have a look. It's still asking me if I want to do it from when I was getting the preliminary settings and testing done. Let's have a look while we'll keep on screen the performance monitor. And as you can see, Video Station can play back that file. That's the H.265, sorry, that's the H.264, my mistake. I must have clicked the wrong file there, I do apologise. Let's see if I'll be proved wrong. We wanted the We're going to rename that, but there we are, that's the 10-bit. It's still going to struggle because it's 10-bit, but I'm just interested to see how well this device handles this file. So it's still 120 megabits per second 4K, but as you can see, there's a little bit of a frame rate drop, and I wonder if SSD caching will assist us with that, but we are looking at the file being played in Video Station where it couldn't be played in Plex. So, do you know what? Let's end on a bang. Do we think this file's going to play? I'm going to let you gamble amongst yourselves. I don't think it will, personally, but it's going to be real interesting to see if this plays. So, have you made your guess? Let's find out. Drum roll. Ooh, we're tense. We're tense. And look at that. 400 megabits per second, 4K UHD H.265 10-bit. And Video Station is playing. I'm not going to say it's perfect, and a lot of that might be my own system resources here on a laptop, but it can play back that file. And I look forward to showing you guys Video Station on this NAS. But this has been Plex Media Server on the Synology DS920. I hope you guys have found this video helpful. I'm sorry if the sound quality has been all over the shop. I've had to move around 3 screens during the course of this recording, and trying to be stationary during that near the mic is tough. But do look out for my Plex Media Server testing happening very, very soon on more NASes. To have a look, give you some idea, if we go back, we've still got the 720 Plus, the 420 Plus, and some QNAPs still to go through as well. But this has been the Plex test. This has been Robbie. Click like if you've enjoyed the video. Click subscribe to learn more. And I'll see you next time.